All right. How's it going, Todd? Good evening, everybody.
Great, Bryan. Hello, everyone.
Welcome to Westward Bees. It is Thursday night. It is March, what is it, the 12th? The 13th?
March
What
12th.
is it?
Yeah,
Holy
it's
cow.
March.
It's almost halfway through March already, Todd. I'm
Yeah.
already getting my weeks all mixed up. Jen's flying to Florida this weekend. And then, hey, Mark. And then next weekend, we don't have anything big coming up, but the following week, Tom and Melissa are coming out. Melissa is doing that honey show at that Pueblo conference, but they're
Mhm.
coming out on a Wednesday and then are going to be here till the following Tuesday. So it'll be fun to hang out with them a little bit. But man, I didn't get in my bees at all today. Hey, Clay. Hey, DC. But I tell you, hey, Dodd, I am right on the edge of my season, about ready to explode. I imagine you're a little bit even farther along. Tell us how it's going out there in California.
Since I got back from St. Louis, it's been a struggle. The struggle is real. I put boxes and boxes on top of them just to give them room because they were bulging. The boxes were totally full of bees. I had, what was it, 38 boxes out there, and not one of them was a dink. So it was
Wow.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
I see
I've, I've
Eric's
got
here.
I've got to add a little story. Remember when
Yeah.
you and I were talking in the airport in St. Louis,
Yep.
and I said that I broke the bridge of my glasses, the nose piece, and so I broke the
Yeah.
other one off when we were in the conference? Well, I got these backup glasses, and when I look straight at my, like I'm doing it right now, I have two sets of eyeball. I've got double decker eyeballs, and it's really freaking me out. So if I look
Gotcha.
down or I look up, that's what's going on. So sorry, I had to
Okay.
say that.
There's a lot of folks in the chat I'm seeing. I see a couple of Colorado folks. I see Kathy and Eric from Colorado and another Eric from Colorado as well. Good to see you all. Eric Franson there. We're going to play a little bit around with queen rearing. Eric, I was going to set up a starter today, but it was so darn windy, I didn't even get into my bees at all. So tomorrow morning, we had one of those days, Todd, where it was windy, lids were blowing off. You had to pick stuff up in your backyard. I'm going to head over to my Morrison yard. I have 16 colonies over there just to make sure that none of those colonies got blown over. That's how bad the wind was. I had one that it's a 6/6/6. It's one of those license that got blown over and it ended up breaking one of the boxes, the clamps that go down to hold the boxes together broke off on the top box. So I'm going to have to
Yeah.
replace that one. So Eric's going to come over tomorrow. We might try to set up a starter and graft just for practice. He's got a little bit more grafting experience than I do, but that's one of my big goals for the year. Every year I set goals, and every year queen rearing and grafting is one of them. And this year I definitely it's the number one goal on my list, Todd, because it always gets pushed down to the bottom and set aside. And this year I'm going to prioritize it. So I've been prepping for that. Now you have queens going right now. Tell us how it's gone.
Yeah, I started the Kent. Well, we learned the Kent Williams method in St. Louis at the EMBA,
Will you tell
and
people that since not everyone got to go?
yeah, so he uses a 5 frame box and he crowds the heck out of it. Right now, I have a box. If you saw it on, it was on Facebook and Instagram. Um, put 4 solid frames of brood in there. They had a honey ridge or rainbow on each frame, so I knew they had enough food, and they have pollen, but just tons and tons of brood. And then I put an empty, well, a floorless 5 frame box on top of that. And I just started shaking as many bees as I could shake in there. I must have shook another 6 frames of bees in there. I mean, you could not see the top rim of the box or the top bars. And then after I got the lid on, there were bees on the side of the box. There were bees underneath the 5 frame box, which is on top of one of my pallets. There was gobs of bees on the front of the box. And that's what Kent said. He said, if you can't if you can't distinguish the color of the box, then you know you have a good builder. So I grafted into it last night about this time when it was kind of getting dusk. It was getting hard to see. I don't think I did very well. I knew I didn't. I put out 10 or 12 cups, and I looked at it after work today, and I only had like 5 accepted, maybe 6, but I couldn't really tell. There's just too many bees on that frame, and I didn't have my brush, and I didn't want to mess with them. So I put them back in. But it's the first round. I'm going to graft into it again on Saturday because those cells, I'm going to use the 48-hour method that he uses. And I have some boxes or some colonies that are queenless right now that I made queenless. And then I'm going to put those cells in there, let them finish them, and then move on to the next batch. And I want to get through my whole yard, except for the Hawaiian queens that I got a couple weeks ago, and a couple other nice queens that I'm grafting from last year that are 1-year-olds. So
what's your goal for queen rearing? Are you just replacing old queens? I know you got some new ones. Like, are you selling queens or just playing?
Well, I might sell a couple of the overwintered queens, but
okay.
I know somebody that needs some, so I might give him some. I might sell some others, but mainly my whole goal is just I need turnover. I've got to get all those other queens. I've just got to put some fresh ones in there, even though they've been overwintered. I know they came from swarms. I don't know how old they are. I'm guessing 2 by looking at them. They're not really tattered, but I want to get everything out. I want everything about the same age, except again for 2 hives, 2 colonies that I know about, but the rest are going. So, I'm going to do like several rounds. I'll probably do about 3, maybe 4 rounds, and it's because of work. Work gets in the way of this.
Sure.
So I don't, unless it falls on a Saturday or I make it fall on a Saturday, it's just going to be a little. It'll be a little process, but I'll get it done.
Well, the thing is with grafting is it's a great skill if you need a lot of queens. It's a great skill if you want to change your genetics all at once by grafting from one particular mother queen. But if you're just kind of, I don't know, for the most part, if you're just raising queens for yourself, there's lots of other ways you can do it that are a lot easier.
Oh yeah.
Just wait until a colony gets ready to swarm and using all the swarm cells you can find,
Yep.
as long as it's not an outlier colony, crowding a colony to get it to swarm. I had an observation the other day, Todd, and a realization that my bees are busting. And I gotta, I've been putting 3rd deep boxes on some of my colonies because first of all, I run double deep 8 frames, and most of them have a frame feeder in it. So we're talking 15 frames of bees, and like some of them have 6 or 7 frames of brood, and they're just packed. Hey, Matt, how's it going? I feel like with the warm weather that we've had all winter, and then the supplementary feed, I've been feeding Matt's fondant, and when that ran out, I went to the global patties, but I feel like all that supplementary feed, not just sugar, but the supplements as well as what's in the sugar, have pushed my bees so far forward. Honestly, Todd, I'm not sure what to do with all the bees I have right now, because
you're about 3 weeks. I was there 3-4 weeks ago. So
I remember. Yeah. Yep. And I'm feeling the same thing. I've got drones. I've got a lot more capped drones than I have walking drones, but that's not going to be for very long. Most of my colonies have drones in them somewhere that I've opened, and I haven't opened them all, but I'm at a place now where I'm going to stop feeding just so they can go through any of the sugar that they have in their colonies to make more space. I was worried about colonies starving out, but at this point, I'm not feeling the same. So I lost. It's weird. I have this chart. I don't have one right here, but I do. I do my colony notes by yard. So I have 2 pages, and every colony has a little row. So like my Morrison yard, and it's like a 3-column chart, and it's front and
Mhm.
back. So on 2 pages, I can make notes on all of my colonies. And that's easy because I'm doing the same thing to all of my colonies. So if for like the title will say like early March feeding. And if anything is something that's different that I need to observe, that's a little note that I'll put down on that sheet. And one thing I've been doing over the winter is shading in those blocks of the dead outs. So I've
Mhm.
had like 10 dead outs throughout the winter, and I did a lot of consolidating in the fall. So I took a lot of losses into the fall.
Yeah.
I went into the winter with like 80 colonies of mine and 12 management colonies. And I lost a couple of management colonies, but of the 8 colonies of mine that I lost, 5 of them are in one half of my backyard. And I was like, and you can really see that pattern with the way the chart is laid out, and the way that like you can just see a block of 5 deadouts right there in one spot. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure why that pattern is there. I'm not sure if there's something different about that location, or did I forget treating them one time or something, but it was really interesting pattern to see for sure. Do you
Yeah.
take notes for your colonies?
That's one thing I need to get better at. But I do write notes on the lid,
I do
very
that too,
cryptic.
yeah.
Like if you
Yeah.
look at some of my videos, you'll see lids that'll say, like QR Queen Right, QL
Yep.
Queenless. But then I'll put other notes like well, obviously the date, but then I'll put M4, or that's mite. If I did a wash, it's 4 mites.
Sure.
So I just have to get a little better at it. I almost thought about painting a section on the top of my lid with that, what's it called? Like that chalk paint, and
Yep.
then just using that lumber crayon I have, because the problem is that I can't scrape it all off my lids, you know?
Yeah.
It fades, and I kind of have to rub it with something like dirt, to get rid of it. But it starts getting confusing to me because I start at one point of the lid, then I go over here, and in a couple of years, I've got it all over the place. I have no idea where the last one was.
I've
So
seen people who are really organized that have started in the top left and have kept like the exact same size font and have gone, and that's not me either. I'm kind of like you, where I need to get better at being. And what I'll do is if I'll go in a yard and work a lot of colonies, I'll work that colony and then write on the lid. Work a
Mhm.
colony, write on the lid. And then at the end of that yard, then I'll get my clipboard with my page and take any notes on that. So I have it
Yeah,
right there on the colony as well as on that paper when I go home. And I'm
yeah,
not very good at data either, but I have gotten good at figuring out what I need to record and remember and what I don't. I've seen people over data themselves of recording
mhm,
every single thing, and
mhm.
that can be important when you're a beginning beekeeper, but at some point you're like, all right, just what do I need, and that's what your data should be representing.
Do you use bricks on your lids, Brian? I can't remember.
Not for communication purposes. Sometimes I'll put a brick on a lid that needs the weight support,
Mhm.
but I'm not putting it in certain ways to indicate queen right, virgin queen,
Uh,
stuff like that.
I do a combination of writing on the lid, but I also use the brick. So if the brick is standing upright on its end, there's a problem. Or if the brick is flat and hanging over the front edge of the lid, that
Okay.
means I got a queen cell that's going to hatch, and I leave that alone. Or if I turn the brick on its side and it's in the middle of the box, and it's turned a certain way, well, that means something else. If it's turned sideways against the top bars, then I've got to look at it. So I use kind of a combo of it. But I like the bricks because I get out of my truck and I'm lighting a smoker, this and that. Won't be lighting a smoker here too long from now, because of the new smoker from Michael. But I'll look down at down the row, and I'll see what's going on. It's just kind of a little, quick recap of where I was at last time. So I do that too, but most of it is writing some cryptic notes, like like Michael Palmer uses duct tape and a Sharpie, and
Yeah.
then he writes one letter words and a number. It's
Yep.
great.
I've got
So
my abbreviations as well. And most of the time I can decipher them. Every once in a while I'm like, what
yeah,
is this one?
yeah, I've done that.
I
Yeah.
see Tom and Melissa say we jot simple notes on our lids with the year's color paint pen. That's a good idea.
Mm.
I realized I thought I was all packed up. I went through some colonies yesterday, a couple days ago, and I was seeing queens that weren't marked. And I have this year's marking pen in my toolbox, but not last year's. So I got to
Mhm.
make sure I pull some of those and still have those with me. Folks, we have the link pinned in the chat if anyone is interested in coming in. We're welcome to chat with each other, but the more the merrier. You're welcome to come and join us. Todd, do you have supers on your colonies yet? Are you like Keith, where you're thinking about honey production?
I am so well. I do have some excluders down and boxes, on top because um there for a while when I was making room, they were also bringing in wild radish nectar. I've got some boxes that are 8 frames full of nectar, and they're
Yeah.
and they're capping it right now, or trying to. At least they're drying it down. But I do have some colonies with queen excluders and supers above. But pretty quick, the oranges are gonna, I would say in a week and a half or so, the oranges are gonna flower. But what's funny is some across town have already started blooming. And I'm like, what the heck? It's
Hmm.
not in the middle of March yet. And they're 3 weeks early. So the farm manager seems to think it's going to be about a week and a half, and I'm just going to leave what I put on them already there. There's no sense taking them off, putting them back on, but I'll add some to other hives too, because uh, I think it's going to be a good orange year. There's lots
How
and lots of buds being pushed out right now.
so you've been keeping bees for a while and you've had a number of colonies for a couple of years. You probably have a bunch of supers already drawn out. How many supers to your production colonies would you say you have?
Not as many as I'd like, and they're all deeps, and I need to switch them to mediums, but I don't
Oh,
know when I'm going to do that. But I've got probably, let's see, I would say somewhere around 40 boxes of of um, uh,
hey Charlie.
of, of deep supers ready. But
Fif- Wait, 50 boxes of deep supers. About how many production colonies? So is that like 1 to 1, 2 to 1?
it depends. I mean, sometimes it's usually two.
Okay.
Um, uh, Sometimes it could be just one. Sometimes it could be more.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much the orange trees want to give out. There's a lot of moisture in the ground right now, so I'm hoping that it's gonna be a good nectar year for oranges. It's already been a good nectar year for wild radish, wild mustard. The fiddle flopped. I mean, it was here yesterday and gone tomorrow. I don't know what happened to that, but um, it should be a pretty good one. So
Hey
we'll
JW.
see. But not all of my frames. That's another thing I want to work on. Are dedicated honey frames. They've
Okay.
had in them before. Yeah. So I
Okay.
don't let them get too old or brown. But if they've got a couple of years of brood in there, that's good enough for me. And after that, then they become brood frames in new colonies.
I get the benefit of people running all one size. If you're going to run all deeps or Charlie running all mediums, the convenience of being able to move stuff from box to box. But for me, I like the separation. I like knowing that my deeps were in my brood and they might have gotten treated, and my mediums are in my honey supers and they never got treated. And for me, it's just an organizational convenience. And my flow isn't really strong enough where I can put a deep on a colony and really expect that to get filled out as much as other places. So Mediums are definitely what work for me. But that's what I found. Like the first year you get a bucket of honey and you're really excited. And the next year you get a couple of buckets. And so much of that is contingent on how much of that drawn comb, not just how many colonies, but how much drawn comb you can put on those colonies that are ready during that honey flow. And I'm at a place now where I've got about 60, 65 production colonies and just about 2 drawn supers for every colony, but ideally I'd like to have 3 because that would be nice. Yeah, JW, absolutely. And you get to that point where you're like, okay, this is a huge asset for me because it's going to help me make honey so much quicker. But I guess here's my question to everybody. As you're putting those supers on and you've got drawn comb and you're trying to expand your drawn comb, where are you putting your foundation frames in your supers to maximize your honey flow while still getting a good amount of supers drawn out? Because I've got 120 supers right now. If I put one foundation in every single one, that's 120 new frames of foundation in a season, hypothetically. That's the easy math. But is that the most efficient? Now, sometimes I'll get a swarm at some point in the year and they'll go in a single and that will make me comb. It'll stay in a single, get a queen excluder, and then foundation on top. So if they're going to bust, they're going to make me nice comb for next year to make honey. So what do you guys do? Do you dedicate a whole box to new foundation? Do you put foundation in particular places in your boxes to draw them out? What do you think?
I just put a whole box in because I've tried Cayman's method where you put the foundation in between the drawn out pieces and they draw out the drawn comb and not the foundation. And then I have nukes and I have queen excluders for nukes. And I'll put a box of foundation up on the top of a nuke box and they'll draw and they'll fill that with honey too.
Yeah.
I checkerboard, I straight checkerboard, but it's going to cut down on your honey production.
Yeah.
You'll checkerboard straight across the box.
If you want to make, a lot of honey, I'm just telling you my thoughts. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just telling you what I do. But it will cut down if you're trying to make a lot of honey. You're better off to stick them in on the outside selectively, I would say, if you're trying to get some drawn out.
Another thing is I demery. So when you're bringing the brood up to the top box, I might only have 4 or 5 frames of brood. Let's say 4 frames. I don't put drawn comb up there because they will fill it with nectar.
Yeah.
So I put foundation up there and they will start drawing comb out and fill it with some nectar.
So you're saying a demery method and like an unexpected consequence is you could get some good drawn comb from that procedure as well.
Demery method actually yields a lot of different things that I found. It increases the honey, increases your bees. It becomes a resource hive on top box. So if I've got 18 hives there and I've got 4 frames of brood upstairs and I need to make a nuke up, you take 1 frame out of each hive. You might even put some eggs up there. And you can also let them make a queen for you. And you got a frame full of queen cells. So now you can pull the queen cells out. You can pull the cat brood out, 1 frame of that out of 1 hive, 1 frame out of another hive, maybe or some honey resources or something. Put that in a 5-frame nuke. Being only 1 frame in most cases per hive, you haven't set that hive back at all.
I'm so glad Philip brought this up because this is something I did the last year and the year before, and it worked really well. I think putting those undrawn ones in the center is a really good strategy because I think that's typically where the bees will start coming up, and those are typically the frames they'll start working. However, it adds another step. Also, and this was the other thing I was doing, like, and I run 8 frames. I was putting a couple of foundations in each box and then coming back a couple weeks later, and then pulling a frame out and then spacing them to 7 in an 8-frame box. Now, if you were doing what Charlie was saying and just put drawn comb in that box, you could start with 7 right off the bat and skip that second step and just put all your foundation into a separate. So you could have some boxes dedicated toward, or some colonies dedicated towards just your honey production, and then some dedicated just towards your comb development as well.
Didn't was it last year? I think Greg Burns put out a video about foundation placement, like position number 2 and then position number 7 and 8 or something. It was, it was random, but it worked.
Yeah.
And it was somebody, it was either him or Cayman, but the tip, I guess, came from a commercial guy. And that's what that guy did. I guess it worked out good. I haven't tried it, but I think that was last year's.
I mean, when it comes to honeycomb, if I have drawn comb, I run 9 in a 10-frame box.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever run 8 in a 10?
No, I haven't. The only problem I have found was when you do run 9, they will make some cross comb in there. And that's something that most people don't talk about. I always thought everything's going to draw out nice and fat. And I had one, it was like super fat. And I said, if I'd have had every frame in there like that, you could probably, like you say, you could have maybe 8 frames in there like that. It's like, holy smokes. But how do you obtain that? Do you pull it out at just 8 frames and let them go? Or do you keep pushing them out a little bit at a time to get them to draw out?
Yeah, I don't know. I use 8-frame equipment.
I have a hard time getting them to pull those frames out like everybody talks about.
I run about all 7s in my 8s, Ron. I've got mostly 8s. The majority of mine, I run about all 7s in them. If you get them properly spaced, you won't have any trouble. That's what I'm going to suggest. If you get one some wider than the others in your spacing, I mean, you're going to get some cross comb. That's just my thoughts.
And then the other thing I've found is that, like, sometimes I'm playing with comb frames, and sometimes I'm pulling out a frame and spinning that out and then putting another one in. And sometimes those ones that are fat on either side of them will start to crowd out that space because they're going to continue to work those instead of working the one in the middle. So sometimes they have frame preference, I guess. Eric says, I run 9 frames in my 10-frame box. I tried 8 frames, which is Bob Binney's approach. I get too much burr comb, which leads to dripping when they break. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Now, I know some people even have those spacers on the frame rest. Does anybody use those? I just kind of I just eyeball mine, and that seems to work okay for me.
I've thought about that, but the problem of it is now you've dedicated that box for that purpose.
Yep. It loses its flexibility.
With me, I run all mediums, and all my boxes could be anything. And I can switch everything around if I want to. Now, I have, like I say, right now I got 3 freezers, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 freezers full of honeycomb and some brood comb. And it's just so much easier to keep it all in one size. And I mean, if you think about it, if you're a commercial guy, look at Ian Stepp or anybody else, they all run all deeps. Me, it's an extra box and an extra 10 frames, but I learned real quick years ago that, that 10 frame full of bees and honey, it's, I don't care what they say, it's 100 pounds. And I just can't lift it. And then a couple of years ago, I was transitioning where I bought some nukes. Of course, they're deep frame, and I was transitioning from deeps. I said, well, let's just run deeps. I got the boxes. I had enough for 4 hives. Well, I learned pretty darn quick why I'd made that decision years ago. Yeah. later that year, here I am trying to lift that top deep off full of honey and pull out the Formic Pro strips or whatever it was. And I'm like, I am going back to mediums as fast as I can. And that's what I did.
I think I'm headed that way. And a hive lifter too.
Yeah, and I was trying to lift them up with a hive lifter, and they were sticking and stuck in them. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was all that hive lifter, I won't say it could do the job, but the stability of it with all that weight kind of up on the higher end. I should go 8-frame, Cajun says. Well, I'll try a box with 8 instead of 9 in there and see what happens. I presume that's eight frames in a 10-frame box.
Probably be heavier.
Yeah, I mean, I had one hive. They drawed it out perfectly. It was like, I would say from the end bar, it was a solid inch out on both sides of that end bar. It was like a huge fat one. And I think that one thing must have weighed 8 pounds, just that one frame. And I said, well, if I could just go 8-frame boxes. No, I'm not switching over now. It's too late for that.
I used to, in the off season, scrape all of my frames, shoulders, and get all that propolis off. And then I was like, why am I doing this? This is the space I want them to have in my Honey Supers. So I just do that to my dead out deeps now. But I would get a lot of good propolis that way when I would do that. What about, this is another thing I'm dealing with, is extra equipment. I always forget in spring how much extra equipment you need. I have colonies that are busting, and I'm putting a third deep on some of my colonies just to give them extra space, to give them something to do. So like I put another box. It had a frame feeder in it because I'm going to pull this box off eventually. It's got a couple of frames of foundation, maybe 2 frames of drawn comb. So I'm trying to get them to pull up and start working in that box. And then when I go back, I'm going to pull a nuke off of the third box, and then pull a nuke out of the bottom 2 boxes as well. So I'll get at least 2 nukes off of each one of those. But I'm at this place where I'm counting my deeps, and I'm already down to like single digits, and I'm going, yeah. And then I'm like looking at my 10-frame equipment going, well, maybe I can run singles in a couple of colonies. And, every spring I forget how much extra equipment you need when you're expanding,
Yeah.
So you're running 8 frames. You got double deeps.
Yep.
Which I have experience with my friend Scott across their way here. He's running 8-frame, and I did find that when you 8-frame versus 10-frame, you got 4 frames of brood there in the brood chamber. It does, in that situation, I'll say the volume of the boxes. There's a change there where you definitely need they're not going to fill up the top deep in the brood chamber with honey like they will in a 10-framer. That's why everybody goes with a single deep and then honey, queen excluder, and then Honey Supers above. And I found out with his that you need to keep those 2 deeps and then put mediums up on top. And now are you finding you got 8 or almost like 16 frames of brood up in there in your hives?
Not every frame is brood laid out, but there's bees on every frame. Yeah.
Well,
what's that?
That's what you want.
Well, that's what I want in like 4 weeks, Charlie. That's not what I want on March 12th.
Why 4 weeks?
Because the timing of the nectar flow.
Okay.
So,
well, it sounded like to me you could go in there right now and pull 3 frames of brood out of there, drop 3 empties in. That would keep her from swarming, and make a nuke. And now you got another hive ready to go.
And that's what I'm doing. But my timing is just so much earlier than every other year I'm doing it. I'm a little I'm a little hesitant to do it, but
well, it's like we had 70 and 80-degree days for the last 5 days, and guess what it did today? It snowed.
Yeah. So we're gonna have like 2 days of cold weather next week, but in general, looking at the 10-day forecast, it goes into the upper 80s towards the end of the following week. So I was gonna make a starter today and graph tomorrow, but it was so darn windy here today that I didn't get a chance to do it. So I'll make just to practice, just to do my first round, and if I end up with some queen cells out of it, that'll set up my first round of splits for those queen cells to go into. And then a couple of days later, I'll do the same thing that Todd did, just graft again and put it right back in that same starter.
To answer Tom's question, it snowed this afternoon pretty good. It snowed enough. It snowed pretty much all day today, almost all day, but it really didn't stick. And then after this afternoon, it got a little bit colder and it snowed a little bit harder. And I'll say all the grass and the cars were covered with about maybe an inch covering. It was enough to where it made the ground white. But then the storm went off the coast, and then the temperature swung back up 10 degrees, let's say in the 40s, 35 to 40, and our ground is completely, it all melted away. So it wasn't really one that would stick. So it's supposed to be windy tomorrow and all that. So I've been feeding my bees. Last weekend the pollen started coming in, so it's either got maple trees or something around here, a couple different colors of pollen. So I stopped feeding pollen patties and bonded and left whatever was on there. And then I'm been feeding Cordis sugar water right now.
Now, Keith had mentioned, Charlie, they were talking about reversing boxes earlier tonight and how it's different with mediums. Do you often have that bottom medium empty and your bees in the top 2 boxes?
That's what normally happens. I mean, 3 years ago when I put super rocket fuel in, that's when it caught me off guard. I'm used to say, all right, well, the bottom box is going to be empty. Well, guess what? That year, it was bees from the bottom board to the roof.
What about this year?
I don't know what's going to happen this year. I've requeened as many hives as I could get done last year. June 2025 queens. I know the one nuke that's all the way at the end out there. It's the queen is there, but she's only got like a couple frames of brood. She's not doing very well at all. And then the rest of them are doing pretty good. I've actually got one hive there that you see in a lot of my videos that she's a 24 queen. And she is just big and robust, lots of bees. And tonight I went out there this evening. Quart jar has probably been on 4 days, 5 days, and she drained that jar. I put a second jar on there and a nuke next door to drain the jar. And I got one other one that's got about just a little bit more left on that jar, and I got to put another one on that one. And the rest of them I had put the jars on later on, depending on weather conditions and stuff. So even though it's chilly, I concerned about, this here yo-yo effect with the temperatures. And I've taken off my winter coverings here. I figured, well, it was so nice, and I could fold them up and put them away because they were dry. So I think cold doesn't really hurt. I just don't particularly care for the wind and all that. So I think I pulled a few frames up out of a few 10 framers, and they got cat brood, they've got eggs, larvae, brood, all 3 stages. So things are going good there. And I'm looking at the brood, and usually you get those ones that are nice and milky, and you can tell that they got lots of nutrition there. And I could see some of them that they got a brood in there, but they weren't real milky. So that's why I figured, well, they needed some sugar water to stimulate them that way.
Charlie, you explained it better than I could remember, but remember Kent was talking about using formic. Let me make sure I'm saying this right.
It's fine to use it to make a brood break.
And
today, Todd,
right.
I'm going to interject. Are you talking about his spring treatments, Kent's? I've used it for years. One frame of one pad of formic, followed in 25 days from the original date with the OAV treatments. I finished up my spring treatments today.
Yeah, I think he said 24 days, but other than that.
But he also used a dribble.
Today you want to do it if you talk to Kent. I've done it that way for probably 10 years. In the spring.
All right, my question is I don't quite follow the timing there of the 24 days.
That's to cover your drones so they're empty. When you show your OAV, the drones will be out of their
So
cell.
he's thinking about the drone brood more so than the worker brood then.
25 days. 24 days is your supposed gestation period, or from the day the drone egg is laying till it's a mature drone.
Yeah.
Is 24 days. So he
Okay,
goes 25.
Now the numbers make more sense to me now because I'm thinking worker brood and he actually was considering drone brood.
Bryan and I sat and talked to him on the beginner side over at the conference in St. Louis before it was his turn to speak. And he spoke, remember, Bryan, he spoke about the dribble and that one little hand sprayer, I guess it's a quart sprayer. You pump it up, and it doesn't have a hose. It's just a long nozzle, and he would open it up, and it sprayed, what was it, 10 ml or 5 ml between each seam. And he was also talking about formic, using formic in that case, wasn't he, Bryan? Like prior to that?
I don't think he was dribbling it. He
so.
was spraying the bees themselves. And he said that if he counted out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it would dose them with 50 mLs or 50 grams
50 ml,
of liquid, but he sprayed the bees themselves.
Yeah.
If you haven't used formic in the past, fellas, formic is quite a bit more caustic, than what your OAV is. I can tell you that. I mean, you want to be more cautious in handling it. It will burn you. So
it's quite.
That's the only time I ever put on gloves is I'll use gloves, rubber gloves for putting on formic.
It's very aromatic, that's for sure.
So I never will. Of course, you know how I am, but I don't. I've got them, but I never used them, to be honest. With folks, I don't suggest that you not use them like I do, but I never used the mask or any of that. I've got the certified the whole bit, and I probably used them twice in the last 5 years. So.
All right, Kathy wants to know about drone colonies. Do you raise drone colonies? I don't have. Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
I presume she's asking whether or not you're raising queens.
I think colonies, for queen rearing.
Down in Georgia, down there, where they would have a queen mating areas down there, they would have 6 or 7 drone production colonies to mate with those 1,500 queens. But in my hives, they all have 2 medium drone frames in there, in each one of them.
Is that just a foundationless, or is it one of those green ones, Charlie?
Green frames.
Yeah.
And they will lay it up corner to corner, and then you don't have all that burr comb in between your boxes. It reduces it dramatically. Won't say 100%, but I'd say at least 80 or 90%.
So you're saying 2 frames out of 30 is sufficient for drones in a medium colony, in a medium brood chamber?
a medium. Now, if you have a deep, just one deep frame.
Yeah.
And per Robin Underwood from up at Penn State, she suggests to put it in third position, closer
In
to
a
the brood, because it
in a
takes
10 frame colony.
in a 10 frame colony. It takes a lot of energy from the brood or the rearing bees to feed them drones and stuff, getting ready to mate and everything.
You know, I do something similar, Charlie. I have frames in my brood chamber specifically for raising drones. One of those reasons is I don't like the mess in between boxes, and I'm preventing that. A second reason is I want my colonies to have drones. A sign of a healthy colony is going to be raising drones. Some of them are mediums in my deep boxes, and I could call the drones, but I typically don't. The only time I am drone culling is if it's a colony that I don't want the genetics moved on to the next generation.
So you're letting them draw drone below. Yeah,
I also have a couple of foundation lists, and I've used like the fishing wire to give it a little bit of support. And this year I'm doing some of the story frames, cutting that foundation in half so they can build the drone. I'm doing a couple where I'm cutting that half in half, so they're each getting a quarter on either end, but most of them I'm just putting that half in the middle. And I'm going to have 2 frames in each of my brood chambers for drones.
Yeah, now for me, medium, I have them in the third position, one over top of each other, and the two bottom, the medium.
Oh, okay.
The bottom box and the middle box is where they're 2 of them over top. Now they'll lay them up corner to corner, not a hole open, with drones. And once they don't want any more drones, then they will backfill it with honey in there.
Yeah. Okay. How about you, JW?
I like the stories. That's what I use.
Yeah. How many per? And what is your brood chamber?
One.
Okay. And you do 8 frame? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, I've got a few 10s left, but I'm gonna, as soon as I wear them out, which they may outwear me, but if I get the 10s wore out, well, I'm going to go to all 8s.
I got a buddy who's thinking of going back to 10s because all of the equipment that he gets donated to him is 10 frame equipment. So he had a shed full of 10 frame equipment sitting on the side of it. And he's like, I might as well run 10 frames. I don't get any 8 frames.
Wow.
I've got 3 storage boxes full of 8 frame stuff, so I'm not too worried about getting more.
So, yeah. Kathy, where are you located at?
Kathy's by me. She's in Colorado. She lives like 10 minutes from me, Charlie.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a great gal. We went through the master beekeeping program, started it pretty much the same time.
Are you done with that now?
Sort of, yeah. I'm taking a little bit of a break.
Yeah, but you haven't finished it yet.
No, I haven't finished. I completed my journeyman level. At this point, I'm not gonna do anything like that for this year.
Is that EAS thing or not?
No, that was the Colorado program. I actually had a local club reach out to me and ask if I would be the vice president, and I was like, "Thank you so much, but I'm gonna take the year off. I'm gonna step back, breathe a little bit, and then kind of
enjoy life."
Recalibrate.
Doesn't Montana State have a good master beekeeper course?
Montana State has a good one. Cornell has a good one. Florida State has a good one.
There's one here in Maryland, which is, I'll say it's related to EAS. From what I know, it does have a journeyman beekeeper saying. Now, what's your explanation of that journeyman? What do they cover, I guess, in that class?
Oh, every program is different. I would say that my journeyman program had a whole bunch of guided studies under certain topics: varroa mite, overwintering, honey, that sort of thing.
Sounds like intermediate to basic stuff to me.
Again, it depends on how much you put into it. You can certainly do it in a half an hour and not go very far into it, or you can really dive into it and get quite a bit. And then there were you had to get certain points in different categories, like education or writing. You would get points if you were an officer in a club. And that was, what was cool about that is all of those things were things I was doing naturally. It was just a matter of just gathering the data for them. But it was interesting. It was interesting to see, Kathy, Charlie, what I was doing regularly and what I wasn't doing. Like I could get like 30 points from catching swarms every year, but I never got any points for writing an article and putting it in a newsletter. Not that I wanted to, but it was interesting to see that when I kind of put it all on.
Yeah, like I used to do my beekeeping calendar for my club for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and Montana State is kind of in the area, but it's an online program. So being in Colorado versus Connecticut really doesn't matter, I think, for that program because it's all online.
Well, after all, Bryan, we are Westward bees, so I was just
kind of keep it west. Yeah, that's a good point. Got to represent.
No, I was just kind of curious. I had put in for this. I've gotten really bored with the clubs and stuff because it's mostly beginner type stuff. Anyway, there was I put in for this. I don't know. I'll say part of it was EAS and part of it they call it the journeyman thing. And I'm like, okay, can you expand on that? And they had anyway, a friend of mine, she really didn't expand on it that much for me. And they said I'd have to wait till 27 to get in. And I'm like, you've only missed 2 classes here, guys. I mean, I probably know more than what, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. And it's like, whatever.
I've said this before, Charlie, my best experience in that program was getting to meet other beekeepers that were serious about beekeeping too. They're spread out pretty dispersed.
I have to agree with you there is like she was telling me that they had a lot of fun. I said, well, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's just like tonight. I went out to dinner with Will up in Pennsylvania, who has sent bees to Cali and came back, and he's pushing. He's like you, going up to a couple hundred hives or more.
How's he doing?
He's doing all right. His bees will be coming back here in the next couple weeks, and some of them were dead out. Some of them made a good. I'll say half of them. He sent 40 colonies. I'll say. And maybe at least half of them made grade. And I mean, you got to remember something. This was like a last minute idea or opportunity, I'll say. And he was going to do it, but later on down the road. And so he worked super hard this winter, really, getting all them bees, combining hives and all these different things and getting them to what he thought was going to do good. Now, why the ones died, I don't know. It might have been a queen issue. He doesn't know yet. He's going to look into it, but he's super interested in doing the California thing.
Here, Charlie, this one's for you. You're in Maryland. This is Kathy asking about the Beltsville lab. I know that Zach Lamas is focusing on his new lab at another college.
Yeah, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which our state meeting was there last month, and he actually stopped by. I talked to him. And
have you heard anything about the Beltsville lab?
Not really. They're still kind of running, but I'm not sure exactly what level of capacity they're running at this time.
Yeah. And will it transition over to his new one? It says Thomas put in UMBC.
Yeah,
University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Thank you.
And no, that's going to be his lab. So he's the state of Maryland Bee Club, along with I think Carroll County. He gotten $20-some thousand in donations, and he's bought like cryogenic freezers that you have to use those in order to keep a bee that's got a virus in it, so the virus won't deteriorate while you're working on that bee or studying that bee. That's the kind of stuff that equipment they have to have. So he's bought a lot, just like in everything, and even in science equipment, they have the Black Friday deals and things like that, and he's bought a freezer that was $30,000 for $15,000, stuff like that, So he's coming along with that, and I'll see him the end of the month at another one-day conference meeting, and so he's been very helpful, and I'm not sure exactly what he's going to try. I mean, he's trying to work with the college, and he's not, what do you call it, a full-time employee, but a sort of a contractual type thing or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about all that. So, but no, I'm looking for, was kind of really interested in getting into this program, but then I haven't heard anything. So obviously that's not going to come through this year, but I'll do my thing on my bees and raise my queens. And I just ordered a book, and I was watching James Lee. I don't know when it was, with a beekeeper out in Beckley, West Virginia, and talking about, kind of reminded me of what Nancy had a year or so ago about, she was going to sell these mini nukes, 2 or 3 frame nukes with a queen. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about where GM Doolittle 100 years ago, instead of us putting queens in the cage and all these kind of different things, you take 2 frames of eggs and brood and larvae and bees, and have the queen in the middle between the 2, and then just drop it in a hive. I
watched that talk too, Charlie. That was a good one.
No waiting period. And I'm thinking to myself, and I just ordered WikiBees Press book about that, the Doolittle, to read up on it. And I'm thinking to myself, I understand what's going on there. You're putting a laying queen in a hive, which she has more pheromone because of being an active laying queen. She also has brood pheromone in them 2 frames. She has her bees in them 2 frames to kind of protect her from the other hive bees. I don't know. Did you get clarification on how soon you could do that? Is it just take the old queen out, put the new queen in, or was it
immediately?
Immediately take it out and not have to wait 24 hours? Just put it in immediately. And
so are you saying you bought Scientific Queen Rearing by GM Doolittle? Is that what you just bought?
Huh?
Is that the book you bought, Charlie?
Yeah.
That's a classic. That is a classic where he describes the grafting method, and he invented the method we still use today. The shaking bees down into the bottom box, putting the queen excluder on, putting the brood up. That's all described in Scientific Queen Rearing. That is a book that every beekeeper should read and have on their bookshelf. So good choice, Charlie. That one's a classic.
Now, Kathy says the box was queenless for a while. Is she saying, was it queenless for a while?
She's asking, no. You pull that queen.
Something about that, Kathy, and everybody else is, Kamen described this in a video one time where he said, if you had take the queen out, laying queen, and you just walk her in the front door at certain times of the year, you can do it that way. And that's, but the key word here is laying queen. She's active. Her pheromones are potent.
And Jamie Ellis, Kathy, spoke at our summer meeting a year or 2 ago, and he did that one talk where every problem a colony has can be solved by dropping a nuke with a queen, with a mated laying queen into it, which is the exact same thing that Charlie's talking about, just 5 frames instead of the 2 or 3 that the guy was describing. But it's the exact same concept, just using that laying mated queen, not a mated queen that's been stuck in a cage, a laying mated queen. Because if she's stuck in a cage for a day or 2, that's going to change her pheromonal output.
Yeah, because the guy, I think he said it on either I read it in the liner notes or something, where if she's in a queen cage for 2 to 3 hours, her pheromones changed already to where she's not quite at high. Her acceptance rate has just dropped dramatically and all that. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, we could, if you think about it that way, you capitalize it where instead of me putting 2 framers out there, I'll put me 5 frame nukes out there in behind for mating boxes, get her. And then that was another thing with Bob Binney. He put out that recent video, or one of those videos where it showed, maybe it was a couple years ago, where it had a chart. And if that queen at virgin came back mated and you leave her in there for 21 days, 3 weeks, her a viability and acceptance rate is way more high, 90+% than it is just for 2 weeks, that 1 week extra week, because she becomes not as skittish. She calms down. And I think maybe that is sensed by the rest of the other bees. Her pheromones, I'll say, develop much more stronger. She becomes more confident in herself or whatever, about laying and everything. And it's just the science proved all that stuff. So if you can let them run for 3 weeks.
Sorry, wrong one. This is Michael talking about his queens.
All this new modern beekeeping stuff is shipping those queens with no retin-A. I'm going to say that's got a lot to do with the queen maintaining her pheromone or not. If you understand where I'm coming from, if she's got
if she's got a good queen court around her all the time.
Yeah. I'm going to say that makes a big difference.
Are you saying that if you see a high population of the retinue, I think it's called, that you feel that she's got a much powerful pheromone?
She's going to maintain that. She should go maintain that pheromone to a greater extent than if she is. It's going to change some. The modern thing to do, they've shipped so many of these queens unattended.
Well, we had Katie Lee last night. I won't say much more than that. I'll talk about that on my show tomorrow night. But she did talk about what Bryan talked about, where you switch the 2 queens around.
Yeah.
All that stuff. But I asked her about that. I said, so what, how do you figure that out? And she said, they don't know. They don't know what happened there.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest, fellas, and I'll probably get shot and maybe barred forever from these chats for saying this. But you got to remember, a lot of these researchers, that's just what they are. They're researchers. They've never kept bees themselves.
I agree with you there, JW, all the time. Sometimes they bring out some good points and stuff.
Sometimes you got to take some of that stuff with a grain of salt, as far as I'm concerned. That's just.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
My opinion, so.
And it's
not
just
like an education, but experience. Really good teachers.
About 2 or 3 years ago, old Cameron Jack come up here, and I seen him 2 days before he jumped on Cayman Reynolds' show, and he was talking about, OA wasn't any good, and this and that and whatever, because what he was doing down in Florida. And I had him up here in Maryland. And I said, well, when did you do that? These vaporizations. And he says, well, the weather was kind of like here in Maryland in September. And I'm thinking to myself, in September, I'm not going to be doing OA in September, not in Maryland. I'm going to be doing it in November. And, even though it's November down there, of course, it's a different climate. It just, to me, he proved that OA is ineffective in a warm climate, because of all the brood. And also, but then he changed his tune once he got 4 grams per brood box too. He also admitted to the fact that somebody said, why isn't this working? And he says, well, that's because you're not using enough per brood box down there in Florida. So anyway, I agree with you, JW. There's a lot of good stuff that come out of research and all that. And
Yeah, I'm not knocking the education. Don't misunderstand me, fellas, but a lot of times you learn about as much from just sticking your nose out there, head out there, and experimenting on your own. What'll work for your place may not work in my place or Todd's place or whatever. I'm going to suggest that experience is just as good a teacher as researchers.
Yeah, it's true. I have to say that. I mean, like they all say, beekeeping's local.
No, I got barred off the last chat for lying, so you got to. That's my caveat.
So I'm going to throw it back at you, JW. You've got an abundance of bees. You're at a place in your life where they're just there for fun. Are you doing any experiments on your bees where you're trying to answer particular questions?
In the bee world, seriously.
Well,
I try different things still all the time that I've not tried in the past, and I've had them off and on for 60 years.
But we can hear the things that Charlie's thinking about these days because he talks about them for months and months. Like right now, he's thinking about probiotics and bee bites and all that kind of stuff, and viruses. And why are we addressing the mites and not the viruses? That's where Charlie's brain's at right now, and he's been thinking about it for a while. Do you have
I'm starting to hear the science community starting to talk about the viral loads, and they haven't said anything about what they can do about it.
So that's my question to you, JW. Do you have any of those bugs that are just kind of bouncing around in your brain that you're focusing your thoughts on this year? Or is it just kind of whatever strikes you at that day when you're out in the bee yard?
Well, you know what I tell these young guys, Matt and Tom and them guys, I said, you guys take this bee serious stuff too serious,
Yeah.
Have a little fun with it and do some experimenting and have fun with it. You guys take it too serious. You're letting the dollar signs get in your eyes. So
do you run a treatment-free yard at all?
No,
are you looking for it?
Lord,
no.
No. Learned that a long time ago. It don't work.
Yeah.
There's things that I do. You guys would talk about the dribble. I wouldn't dare dribble a hive. I've tried it. Killed about probably 10 or 15 hives. Trying messing with it. It's too much too quick. I'm concerned. I've been experimenting with the extended release. Like it, took them all out and throw them away. It's just my own opinion. Didn't work for me. Where it affected me from a research standpoint, so to speak, and a practical farmer terminology was that the where I messed up, I guess, was putting there. According to Kent, I talked to Kent about it. He says, don't try to do the extended release in the colder months. It will not work. What it did, I made a mistake of putting it on during the colder months. What happened is I feed, fondant and various feeds as applicable depending on the time of year. And I basically feed year round. And when I put the extended release pads, even the commercial and some homemade ones, I made some. Matt Ramsbottom made some. And every one that I had them in that I made, or the commercial ones, the bees didn't take the feed down. And I had I had half a yard that I had the extended release in, and had half the yard that I did not treat with the extended release. The half a yard that I didn't treat, and I'm talking about 20 plus hives in each half, a yard of 48, 49 colonies, depending on, you lose one now and then, but it varied. But the ones I didn't treat, they took the feed down and they're a lot stouter. Not having the feed reduced the population in the hives that I had the extended oxalic acid strips in. I took them all out and threw them away, and I finished that throwing the last 4 away today that I had because I finished up my formic treatment on all my hives yesterday and today. So you know, but beekeeping is one big experiment as far as I'm concerned.
You bet.
I mean, you know, it's a constant experiment. I mean, that's what beekeeping
That's
is.
what I tell everybody I said it's an experiment, never quits.
I'm at a place this year where I've got 90 colonies right now to play with. I've only got 8 nukes sold so far this year, and I've got 90 colonies that I've got to split if they don't swarm. So I'm like, what am I going to do with all these bees? So last week or two ago at the winter market, there's this guy that he lives out in the plains of Colorado. He's a pig farmer and he sells pork and all that kind of stuff. He started asking me if I ever take bees out to pollinate canola and everything. And I'm like, no, I don't move bees. That's not my thing. And then I went home and thought about it. And I'm like, where am I going to put all these bees? And I was like, maybe I can ship some bees out to the plains. So I went back the next week, started asking him about it. Turns out he was kind of just talking, didn't really have anybody in mind, but he's like, I'll look around for you. So if he can find someone, I might take some bees and take those 10 frame deep singles out there and just put them out there for a couple of months and then bring them back in like August or September.
Go out there where the alfalfa fields are.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
You could do good there.
That's right.
You can bring them out here. I've got about 300 or 400 acres you can stick them on.
I wish I could, JW. That's my biggest problem right now.
So JW, did you get land to put bees?
Sir?
Did you get a tornado close to you?
No, they was all 100 to 150 miles north of me.
Okay.
They were in north central Illinois or northern Illinois and Indiana.
They really destroyed everything out there.
They were all way north of me.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I don't know. Like I say, for me, I mean, as far as, I don't probably want to get into that class or whatever it was, but I ain't gonna hurt me. I just continue to play with my bees and make lots of honey, and hopefully this year and hone my queen ring skills even more than what I did last year. I got the cell builder and stuff like that down pat. Now it's trying to make sure I have mating boxes.
You've got another serious problem, Charlie. I hate to tell you this.
What's that?
I said, you've got another serious problem coming up. I hate to tell you this, and I don't mean anything personal, but I've got Matt's sawmill now, and I may put you out of business.
I'll tell you what, you can come on over here and one mine.
You
can have that.
And JW, Matt's got some of his bees out by you now, is that right?
Yeah, he's got some out here also, yes. But I've still got lots of room.
I keep waiting for Tom and Matt to get a semi truck and haul some bees out to California, man. Those guys, man, they keep growing and growing, and I know they probably won't, but they have that mind, Both of them are just swinging for the fences.
Here's my thought on that.
Yeah.
Beware, beware, beware.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't want to do that.
That's all I'm gonna comment.
I just say high risk, high reward, JW. And I think maybe
what's wrong with out here?
Nothing. It's just part of the game. And that's what there's good and bad things about everywhere.
It's the bee people, so to speak.
Todd, I was thinking about you this week because at this time of the year, you always see it in the bee magazines and you see it on Facebook. People are leaving almonds and sometimes trying to sell bees. You ever tempted to try to pick up a deal? Because they look like pretty good deals at that point, man. At least on paper or in the post.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize, Bryan, is I'm going to say, this is strictly my opinion. You got to consider the source.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that better than 50% of the packaged bees that people buy. That's what you're
Oh,
buying.
yeah. Yeah, right out of almonds, either nukes or packages.
That's where all
Absolutely.
these guys are bringing back to Florida and Alabama and, the big boys. That's where they're drawing them packaged bees out of at people's.
Well, here in Colorado, they come right from California. So, I mean, we got people bringing bees in all different times in April. They're not ready here in Colorado for selling. They're just bringing them in. So, yeah,
the majority of your packaged bees is my thoughts.
I was just, as Todd was thinking about the benefits of California, I was just wondering if that was, do you see that as a benefit, or is that one of those high risk kind of situations as well of what am I bringing into my bee yard?
The bad and the ugly, but it's high risk, high reward. Now some of them bees come back if they're healthy, or they come back in stout shape.
Yeah,
and
stout.
Makes them but I've over the years did that and started over 2, 3, 4, 5 different times, with bees.
So what did you do? Buy a wood miser, JW, or did Matt buy one?
Matt had one out his place, he's had it for years. I think his wife suggested that he might move it. I told him I'd store it out here for him. I'm just joking you. It's just something that I may play with a little bit.
Is that a portable?
I've always wanted one, honestly. It's a small wood. It's a 15.
That's what we had.
15.
You must have bought mine.
Yeah. So
we got rid of that thing.
Yeah.
Too much labor.
Yeah. Well, us young guys, we got a lot of extra time, so we can play.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice little toy.
I've got some what I'm considering doing, to be honest with you. I want to make some raised. I do a little play with a little gardening and greenhouse stuff, and I need to make some new raised beds, and I've got access to a bunch of cedar cross country.
Yeah, I had a guy call me today. Looking for a garden. I call them garden boxes.
Yep.
I don't understand how people spend $800-900 on a bunch of garden boxes. Why don't you just plow the field up and plant it and be done with it?
Yeah, it's. I've got them around my greenhouse. I've got a little pollinator garden, so to speak, and in fact, I planted a bunch of hyssop and some. Then senior moment. Can't even think of what I planted today.
But
sweet clover. I planted a bunch of sweet clover today, and it's wet. I mean, so I threw some of the seeds on floating water, but I figured the water will go down, the seeds will go with it. So we'll see what happens. So I like to mess with. That's kind of stuff I like to do. Mess with pollinators and things of that nature. See what works and what don't work. Speaking of forage, have you guys got a forage crop out your way, Bryan? We talked about that a little bit on. Like I said, I got barred off a Keys for Lion. He barred me off the
If you leave the city area and go north or east, there is some, like up by Eric and Longmont, you'll get all that alfalfa. Yeah. But I'm in the suburban area, so most of what I'm getting here is the trees, all the trees in the neighborhood. So there's a little bit of alfalfa that's wild around, but you have to really leave the Denver metro area to start getting that. And then John Mitchell, he lives at like 8,000 feet. He's got a totally different ecosystem he's dealing with.
Yeah, he does.
That's more of a high desert type for where John is down there, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So does he live in the mountains or what?
Right on the edge of them. Yeah. So he lives kind of like the Front Range goes kind of north-south, and he lives right up on the edge of what's called the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which is west of Pueblo. And then right on the other side of it is the sand dunes. So it's quite a while from, like, he's in the Pueblo Club, but I think he's like 40, 50 minutes of a drive to get from his place to the Pueblo club. So he's starting like an informal club in his area, and he's gotten I think he had like 40 or 50 people at the very first meeting. So
sounds like I sound like there's a need there.
Yeah, apparently.
You say what, on the other side of the mountains where the desert is or something?
What's that?
You were talking about sand dunes or something or another.
Yeah, it's a national park called the Great Sand Dunes.
Oh.
I'd be kind of south of him, wouldn't it not be, Bryan? I'm semi-familiar. I used to hunt down in around Alamosa. You know,
yeah, Alamosa is right around the sand dunes. That's like the town right there. Yeah.
Oh, what's it?
We
desert or what is it? Sand
dunes? It's the high desert. Yep. So we would go camping there. And when I was a teacher, we would do a fall camping trip and a spring camping trip. And the fall camping trip was usually just 1 or 2 nights, but the spring camping trip was like a Monday to Friday. And the sand dunes was a place we would usually, or one of the places we would go to. One year, we get there, we start setting up all of our tents, we get them all set up, and it starts snowing. And we just got there, and we have no idea what we're going to do. So we went into town. We went into Alamosa, which is like a 35-minute drive.
I think I've been there.
Went to a movie because we had no idea what we were going to do. So we took like 45 kids to go see a movie, came home, came back to the campground, and some of the tents, because they were just covered with snow, some of the poles had broken and everything. So we had to juggle kids around the first night, pulling out extra tents and everything. The best part was the next day was so nice. There's a creek that runs right through the park, and it's like a sand dune. So it's like a beach. There's all this sand there. So it's literally like playing on the beach. So we had all this snow that melted, which made the creek awesome. By noon the next day, it was 75 degrees. Everyone who was miserable the day before was in like perfect weather the next day, 75 degrees, playing at the beach at the sand dunes. It was awesome. We had some fun times on some of those trips, but camping with like 45 to 50 kids, I'm glad to be not organizing that anymore for sure.
How's my good old buddy, Mr. Prater, out there? How's things going in your world?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just plugging along. The weather is going to change. We're going to be in the 90s next week, I think, starting Tuesday.
It's been nice around here. We've had nice weather, but we're supposed to have a little cold snap Monday and Tuesday. They're giving like Monday night here. My local area is like 17 and a high of 28. I mean, we're going to have 48 hours. That's the reason I haven't broke my hives apart. I'd like to do some breaking some hives down and possibly adding some supers, but I'm afraid to spread them out too much, and I don't want to break the propane seals with that cold snap coming. So,
that's the opposite.
You also mentioned getting you a hive lifter.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
I'm working on that for you. I'm looking for a big Swedish. We got a lot of Swedish, Norwegian women out in my area. So I'm gonna try to get you one of them big Swedes.
That'll work.
You won't need that hive lifter, old buddy. I'll save you some money.
Todd needs an Olga or a Helga to help him lift his supers.
Yeah. That's right. That's what we're going to do.
I knew you came on here for something. You've probably been holding that for 45 minutes. Huh?
He'll probably want to walk up to him and give him a big old squeeze.
I'm gonna get you an Olga or a Helga, or, big stout blonde.
I saw you pop on the screen there, and I thought, oh, he's up to something. Yeah, you played that just right, JW.
All right.
I'm not playing cards with you. That's...
Oh God.
Like I said,
Paul. Oh, thanks, Paul. Thanks a lot. Hey, if she could cook, we might have that might work.
Yeah, she doesn't need to cook. You can cook. She needs to lift boxes.
I used to know a Helga. She was fine looking.
Okay. Well, it's getting late here. See, I got to get up and go to work tomorrow.
Well, I understand that 100%. Like I said, I got barred off the last chat.
Yeah. You're batting 1,000 tonight, sir.
Nice meeting you, Kath.
So Charlie, have you done first inspections yet, or is that this week coming up?
I pulled a couple frames up, and I've got I got brood in all stages, and at least two or three of the bigger hives. I've got, some hives got brood, about 6-8 frames across. The last couple of weeks, of course, finally warmed up and the cluster is broken. It's across the frame, but I have not done any deep dive, and they're talking about in the 30s next week sometime. I have to kind of see. I think this weekend it's going to be in the 50s, and I'm, I'm kind of like between on the fence, some of them I haven't got juice jars on them, and I've got a medium up on top of that hive covering that jar up. But I went out there this evening and it was like 38 degrees. They weren't in cluster. They were on that juice jar sucking it down. So they're in. I'm looking at insulation on top and all that stuff, which you can't do that with a juice jar on,
right?
And that kind of thing. But I'm just looking at, like, tomorrow's supposed to be windy, which that's what my carpet really does, is block the wind. Night glade, and so I just leave them at, like, they're right there right now. They're out there. Let them go and see what happens. They should be, they're building up pretty good right now, so they should be fine, I think, in this roller coaster ride weather we got.
Yeah, and that cold weather JW was talking about, it's going to be here on Sunday and Monday, so we'll have a high of 33 on Sunday, high of 53 on Monday. But by Saturday, the 21st, 90 degrees. Holy cow. So, I've looked in some of my boxes. I've gone through some of them completely, but most of my inspections have just been from the top, just kind of looking and seeing what's going on or tipping that top box back. How about you, Todd? Where are you at right now?
I've been through every box out there.
Yeah. You've split already a bunch. Are you going to split again?
I'm going to do on those hives that need requeening, I'm going to do blind splits. I'm going to break them down into singles and just put a cell here, a cell there. I'm not even going to waste time looking for a queen. They can fight it out. Pretty certain that Virgin would win that fight 9 times out of 10. So that's what I'm going to do. On top of doing a surgical strike where I'll make sure I know where that queen's at and move her, pinch her, sell her, give her away, whatever, and then put a cell in there. So
yeah, we got like in the 70s Sunday and then dropping down to 28 Sunday night, and then they're showing the high for Monday of 28 and the low of 17 for Monday night.
Yeah.
And back in the 70s by like Thursday or Friday again. So that's hard on them little bugs in the box, as the fellas call them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says here. Let's see, what's today? Yeah, Friday it's going to be 53. Saturday and Sunday you're going to be in the 50s. Monday will be in the 60s, but then Tuesday and Wednesday of next week will be 37 and 39. Then it's back up in the 50s by Thursday.
Yeah,
if they got it correct.
Yeah.
So, and it's, well, in the 40s most nights, except for next week, it'd be in the 20s at night. So I don't know. I'll have to kind of see. I mean, maybe I'll get in there Saturday afternoon and do a little more rooting around, see what's happening.
I was just thinking about this the other day too, Matt. I started pulling off some of my pink insulation and I was like, should I, shouldn't I? And I did for a couple of them, and I didn't for like some of the big ones with the bigger population I did, but it's definitely time for me to start thinking
when
about
it comes
that
like
too.
you were back to that question, reversing.
Yeah.
No, not normally. I don't do any much reversing. If it's April and I'm getting ready, that's my honey season's getting ready to start. That's when I hit everybody goes to demery mode. So that I make sure that the two bottom mediums have all my open brood, and I pull all my capped, put it in that top third medium, and then queen excluder and one honey super to start out with. And so that way I'll have 4 mediums on the stack. And then our main flow doesn't hit till May. So hopefully by then my bees will be growing and be super strong. Hopefully it's like something that I observed in my honey supers. If you've got a wad of bees in the honey super that's covering, let's say 9 out of 10 frames across, and you can't hardly see any of the frames, you'll have a full honey super. If you only have them on 5 or 6 frames, that honey super will only fill out half and stuff. That's something I've observed. So the big thing about beekeeping is don't get intimidated for the amount of bees are in your box.
Yeah.
I found that the ones that it's a sea of bees and are overflowing, that's the kind of hive you got to have in order to be highly successful when it comes to honey, crop. You got to, it's kind of like being right on the edge of swarming, but they don't swarm. So
that's a tricky dance, though, especially with the weather changing so much. You look at last year's calendar and you try to time it, and this year's calendar is definitely different than others. So that's the tricky part about that, Charlie.
Weird year.
Brian,
all right,
I've got a question for you, Brian. Pardon my interference.
Go for it.
How do you keep your hives? Are you got them on together, or you got them on pallets? You got them on individual stands? When you got stuff in different places? I was curious as to how.
Yeah, most of mine are on stands of 2. So I'll have 2 with the space in the middle, and that space of the middle allows me to work, put stuff there, but it also allows me to put a nuke there in the spring with the entrance the opposite way. I prefer to work my colonies from the side as opposed to the back. So I could put 3 across there, but then I wouldn't be able to work that middle one from the side. So that's just my personal preference.
It's like my rack's right there. That rack is designed to put your lids on that rack in the middle. I can put 2 lids in there, or at least 1. And then in the latter years here, the last 2 years, I've gotten them aluminum tables, or whatever you want to call them, benches.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They are at a height that you don't need to bend over. You just kind of do a lateral twist, set your boxes right on there, and you don't need to be way down to the ground. You can pick it up and put it right back on there. I got 2 of them now. It really makes a big difference.
I've got one of those too, and I agree. It makes a huge difference from picking it up at waist level versus picking up from off the ground.
No way, Tom. Been there, done that. Retried that a couple of years ago and found out while I went to all mediums and all.
He's just trying to aggravate you, Charlie. Don't pay attention.
Oh, I know he is. It's fun.
All right, everyone. Well, we have Charlie's chat is tomorrow night. You'll be talking about your visit with Katie Lee a little bit, Charlie. Anything else on the agenda?
Well, doing that, not really any other type of agenda. We'll kind of see how the weather goes, and hopefully it's better than what it was today.
All right. And then we have Joey Rawls on Saturday, Gunline, Tim and Hannah Sunday, Bill on Monday, Tuesdays, Tom and Bob often, Wednesdays, the StreamYard. Todd, have you looked at the calendar?
Oh, yeah. Let me look.
The 26th is 2 weeks from now. Are you good for that one?
I'm good for that one. Oh,
awesome.
Hang on.
Yep.
Stand by. Let me make sure here.
And don't forget, Keith Spillman is taking over the early Thursday night slot. We've had some great conversations with Keith out in the North Carolina area as well. Hopefully they'll let you back on, JW.
Oh,
Somebody will. Somebody will let you back in.
old buddy Charlie or old buddy Joe. He's my old reliable. So
Yeah, he's a great guy.
he's a fine fella. Everybody that don't have had the pleasure of spending some time with Joey Rawls, he's a fine fella.
We had great conversations driving around. He drove me around in Kentucky and then in St. Louis too. So yeah, he's a really good guy. I like Joey a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone.
He doesn't eat bugs, so he's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, you know, you got to do stuff. You got to do certain things to create attention. You know, when you.
I guess so. Okay.
I told you guys take this bees in the box thing too seriously. Now you got to loosen up, have a little fun.
Yeah, we do. All right, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you in 2 weeks or maybe even tomorrow night at Charlie's.
Good night, everyone.
See y'all later.
If I can find another chat, you may see me again tonight.
Hawaiian